So, what did you tell the good folks at the chamber today?
Bill, we talked about numbers, straight up the budget. The current budget, and say by current I mean the budget for this fiscal year, it started Monday, July 1. It's $26 billion. That compares to the budget last year, which was $23 billion. So it's $3 billion more. If you look at the state money, the current amount of state money we have to spend is about $14 billion. That is the most state money that we've had to spend since well before 2008. I think it's the most state money we've ever had except for one budget. The $26 billion budget, which is just the executive branch, doesn't include judiciary or legislative. If you include all that, it's about $31 billion, is the largest budget in the history of the state. Now, I'm excluding the one budget we had after the hurricanes when a lot of the federal money flowed through Louisiana state government as a conduit to help our people rebuild. The obvious question is where did the extra money come from? Over the past 365 days, the three sessions we've had this year and the last regular session, or the regular session from last year, 2015, they've raised about $2.4 billion in taxes and fees. It's a breathtaking amount. It's the largest tax increase in Louisiana's history. They took a big slice out of the economy at a time when the economy's not well. We have the third highest unemployment rate in the country. We're only below Illinois, 0.1% below Illinois, and we're below Alaska. We'll probably surpass Illinois, unfortunately. 40% of our gross domestic product in the state is related directly to indirectly to oil and gas. Oil and gas exploration, oil field services, maritime, all the support industries. Our oil and gas industry is not in a slowdown. It's not in a recession. It's in a depression. I think our unemployment rate's about 6.3%, but that doesn't tell the whole story. It's in St. Mary Parish, it's 9%, and climbing. This is not a strong economy, and the policymakers in Baton Rouge were obsessed with one question: how much money does state government do we have to spend? Nobody ever stopped to ask how much money do the people of Louisiana have to spend. And I don't know many businesses or people, many plumbers or electricians or oil field workers or reporters that have a lot of extra cash lying around right now to give to state government. But they took it. And I don't think they're through. The governor, I believe, is his holy grail now is personal income tax increase. I think they're going to come back and try to do it, raise taxes even more. And I think he's wrong.
What's the alternative? If you
get control of the costs. They didn't spend 15 minutes in any of the sessions talking about spending reform, how to lower costs in Medicaid, how to lower our labor costs, what to do about consulting contracts. They didn't spend any time. It was as if they assumed that all the money in state government was being properly spent. And the additional amount that they have to spend now is breathtaking. Look at whenever I give my point of view, people say some of my opponents always say, well, it's the governor. People say, well, it's all federal money. No, it's not. Break down the $26 billion budget. It's about $12 billion federal money, about $14 billion state money. The amount of state money that we have today is 31% more than the amount we had in 2010. Now, I think most families in Louisiana are living on the same income that they made in 2010 or less. I know in my house, I mean, Becky and I, living on the same salary we made in 2010. Why doesn't the state government, why isn't living within our means an option? And I just think that a lot of this was unnecessary if they really tried to control costs. And they didn't. And I don't think the governor intends to. I like the governor. I respect the governor. I've known him for a long time. I respect his office. But he and I just disagree. He thinks he can tax the state in prosperity, and I don't think it can be done. And I think he's going to wreck this economy even further trying it.
If I know you've talked a lot about consulting contracts in particular, how much meat is there to to cut?
I think there's a lot of meat. I mean, if you look at the legislative auditor's report, what he points out first is that we don't even have a central database of all of our consultants. If you read his report carefully and read it alongside the report put out by the Division of Administration, before the last division, before Governor Jindal turned the reins over to Governor Edwards, we probably have well over 20,000 consulting contracts, and that's a guess because they don't have a central database. I've tried to get the legislature to become involved in reviewing those contracts because right now those contracts are controlled by the bureaucracy. The legislature has refused. They passed a bill this year that said it's okay. In fact, we want the bureaucracy to report to us about the consulting contracts. But we had a provision in the bill that required the Joint Legislative Committee on the Budget to approve the contracts, and they took it out. They didn't want the authority.
Didn't want the authority or didn't want the scrutiny?
I don't know.
So,
But they took it out.
contracts come from somewhere, don't they?
The Senate Finance Committee.
Yeah.
I've shown them specific contracts, hundreds of them, thousands of them. It's clear to me this legislature doesn't want to be bothered with it. This governor doesn't want to be bothered with it. The House actually passed, I think it was House Bill 470, early in the regular session, when the governor announced he was going to cut TOPS. We were 183 million short on TOPS, he said at that point. The House passed a bill that said we're going to fully fund TOPS by reducing the $20 billion plus that we spend on consultants. That's spread over 3 years. We're going to reduce it by a little bit, 183 million, and spend that money on TOPS. Passed the House, and everybody said, well, okay, the problem has been solved. It went to the Senate Finance Committee. Every single member of the Senate Finance Committee voted against it. Every Democrat, every Republican, the governor lobbied them hard. He didn't want to solve the TOPS problem. They wanted to have a crisis so they could try to leverage voters to tell their legislators to raise their personal income taxes. And that's what's going on. I mean, I don't mean any disrespect, and they're coming back. This business about, the governor's made it very clear. He thinks we still need more money.
Okay. So,
It wouldn't surprise me if he called them back into another special session in the fall.
yeah, I mean,
And so far they've gone along. I mean, the governor won. Governor Edwards won these 3 sessions. There's just no question. He got his way. He raised on his own about $1.6 billion, and you add that to the $800 million that the legislature raised in the regular session of 2015, and it's $2.4 billion. It's just a fact.
you talked about $20 billion in consulting
At
contracts
least, yeah.
over 3 years. I'm assuming some of those are legitimate and needed.
Oh yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
How much is there to cut there is what I'm saying.
I don't know. I mean, at one point under Governor Jindal, we got the Division of Administration to agree to put as many of the consulting contracts on the internet, on the LATRAC website, as they could. And they did. Governor Jindal's people did it. Sometime last November, somebody at the division changed up the program so you can only get partial information. It doesn't give you a full description of the contract. Doesn't tell you whether it's state or federal money. They made the transparency worthless. So I raised the question with Governor Edwards, wrote him a letter. And he said, well, it didn't happen under my watch. And it didn't. I'm convinced it didn't. But I'll get it fixed. It was supposed to be fixed April 1. It's still not fixed.
It's still not fixed.
They say now October 1. But I fully expect in October 1 it will be fixed. I mean, it's just, I can give you the statistics. A lot of the abuse occurs, the division has delegated to the bureaucracy the authority to issue as many contracts as it wants worth $20,000 or less. So that means they don't have to get an agency doesn't have to get permission to issue a contract of $20,000 or less. According to the legislative auditor, there are 4,599 of those little contracts. $280 million is an estimate. The legislative auditor said in his report this time last year, he said he counted 14,693 consulting contracts, but he said there were another 8,068 worth $6.2 billion that weren't in the database. And on top of that, there were another 4,599, the little ones that weren't in the database. So you can do the math. I mean, that's almost 25,000. And somebody's making a decision on who these consultants are, why they're being hired. I don't know if anybody's checking to see if they're doing what they're supposed to do. I know we had there's a group out of New Orleans, I'll just give you one example, called Alternatives Living. The Department of Health and Hospitals gave them a $3 million contract. It's an NGO out of New Orleans. And their job was to help the disabled. Started in 2009. In 2013, the legislative auditor did an audit and said, hey, Alternatives Living is not paying payroll taxes. They owe state and federal government $1.3 million in payroll taxes. Reported it to DHH. DHH didn't do anything. In 2014, Lee Zurich at Channel 8 did a report through public records doctrine request, did a report. He found about $400,000 of that money was being spent on tuition. They went to the Bahamas, they went to Las Vegas, they took a bunch of cruises, they had spa treatments, they had leased a Mercedes, they had I don't know how many expensive restaurants they'd gone to. After Lee did his report, the legislative auditor went in and looked and said, yep, did a 27-page report, said, yep, Zurich's right. So I wrote DHH a letter. I said, guys, pull the money. You know what they said? We're not going to do it. They're quoted in the paper. They're delivering good services. Well, 3 weeks ago, the U.S. attorney, you just indicted them all. I guess they're going to pull what's left now. Nobody was checking these folks. Nobody knows. You can't find out who gave them the contract, why they got the contract, why they didn't take that $3 million and go hire UNO or SUNO or Delgado or Nichols, the sociology departments or the schools of social work, to administer the money. Nobody knows where Alternatives Living came from. And that's just one example, Bill. There are hundreds, thousands of those. I found two where both were over $500,000, federal money. That I think it was, I don't remember what agency. It might have been DHH, but I don't remember. They had 500,000. They had $1 million they had to spend. You got some federal money to study the effects of the oil spill. So they went and hired two professors, gave them each 500 grand. One is at the University of Tennessee. The other one's at Rutgers University in New Jersey. And I asked them, I said, guys, what are you doing? They said, well, it's just federal money. I said, well, no, it's taxpayer money. And I said, why didn't you hire a Louisiana professor? They said, we couldn't find one. I don't believe that. And it wasn't just Rutgers and University of Tennessee. There were a whole bunch of 3 or 4 others. I guarantee you nobody offered that to Nichols.
This was to do what again?
Study the effects of the Macondo oil spill. I can send you the contract number. I've given example after example after example after example. They've got a $1.4 million contract at the Department of Education with a group out of New Orleans called New Orleans, South Africa. Don't know who they are. Nobody seems to know. They're supposed to provide after-school tutoring. Maybe they're doing a great job. But I said, hey, why don't you take that $1.4 million and offer it to Southern or UNO in New Orleans or Delgado. Let their school of education administer the contract. They can be paid for it. Let the kids do the tutoring. They can get academic credit. And let's use the money at our universities. Nope, don't want to do it. I said, okay, why don't you just go run an ad in the papers and say, all of our teachers out there, if you want to work a couple of extra hours after school or on the weekends and get paid $50 an hour to tutor, are you interested? And let them do it. I think a lot of teachers jump on. Nope, don't want to do it. And that's just one of those. They've got about 20 of those. They're probably spending 20 to 30 million a year on these outside groups. Nobody's measuring whether the kids are learning. They give them the money. And I can't get anybody to look. Not in the legislature, not the governor. I couldn't get Governor Jindal to do it either. I haven't said a single thing or made a single suggestion to Governor Edwards that I didn't make to Governor Jindal.
What do you think that is?
I don't know. I just don't know. I have to assume that the bureaucracy's guarding turf. That's probably part of it, but that's just. I feel pretty comfortable saying that. I'm only speculating. I know if you're paying out $20 billion plus to outside consultants and you try to take their money away, they're going to fight you. There are probably some with political connections. I'm not naive. I don't know. My critics say, we couldn't run the state without consultants. He's saying they're all bad. No, I'm not. I've never said that. I've said what a rational person would do would be to find out how many we got, and then go through every single one and say, okay, which ones do we really need and which ones do we not need? Can we direct the money elsewhere? And if it's federal money, can we use that? Can we administer that federal money through our universities? I know one university specifically in North Louisiana that put together an after-school tutoring program for its School of Education, and they came to Baton Rouge and said, we put a program together. Our faculty is going to administer it. Our kids are going to do the tutoring. We will actually measure progress and deliver you the metrics. They were told, no way. We've already got our consultants. I talked to the college president who told me this. Now, I'm not going to use his name. They'll fire him. But he told me, he said, we were told, hey, don't ask questions, don't cause trouble, just going back home.
Well, you used the term consulting contracts, and when I think of that phrase, I think of someone who's, strictly in a consultant capacity. You're talking about providing services too, though, at some point. And I mean, we've had a trend for a long time where government is turning over at least some functions like maybe tutoring or mental health care to private
It's true.
enterprises of one kind or another. Are you opposed to that or
No. First thing I'm opposed to is not knowing what we're spending, and not knowing how many we have, and not having a database, and not having somebody checking the bureaucracy, saying, "Why are you doing this? Why do you need to do this? Why wouldn't this money be better spent in health care, or at a university, or building roads?" We don't have anybody doing that. I mean, the division will freely admit that for the longest time, all they did was see if the signatures were there and make sure that it was in legally proper form. They just let these departments run wild. I would start with these 4,500 contracts that are $20,000 or less. I think what you're going to find is that a lot of the bureaucracy, some of their friends retire, and they need a little extra money. And I give them 5,000, 10,000, 8,000 contracts.
Yeah.
It adds up, man. And the other question is, who's measuring the results? Okay? I mean, you can't just give somebody $1 million contract to do after-school tutoring without saying, okay, did taxpayers get their money's worth? I just think there's an enormous amount of money to be saved.
Not to cut it short, but we need to get back to
Okay, but they, for whatever reason, the people who control the policy don't want to look. They don't, and I've showed them contract after contract after contract after contract, and they don't. It's always, oh, you don't understand, or that's federal money, or somebody on the Joint Legislative Committee on the Budget said, oh, we don't have time to review all these contracts. I mean, you're sitting there cutting tops, for God's sakes. And you're telling me that you're not willing to even review them and exercise the authority we're trying to give you to say no? They said, no, we don't want the authority. And the governor lobbied against it. The governor was right there saying no, you know. And that's just, it's not just consulting contracts, though. There's nobody trying to control costs in Medicaid. There's nobody looking at the span of control in state government. I mean, the legislative auditor did a report for us a few years ago. 22% of our managers in the classified service manage one employee. Average manager manages 4 employees. No business is going to have less than a span of control of 1 to 8 or 1 to 10. There was a very exhaustive report put together in 1995 about how our labor costs, in terms of our layers of management and our spans of control, are out of whack. And we've just got too many generals and not enough foot soldiers. And when somebody gets laid off, it's the foot soldiers. Or they don't fill a vacancy, it's the foot soldiers. Well, the money's in the generals, because a lot of the generals have a car, and they have an iPad, and they have an iPhone, and they have a bigger retirement.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, the Governor Jindal moved a lot of our state employees who were working for DHH. He just moved them over to the private hospitals. So they're off the books. Now, taxpayers are still paying for them, except we just pay the private hospitals who now pay the former state employees. And after that happened, on paper, the number of state employees dropped. They didn't really drop because we're still paying for them, but they're off the books. And so now you go talk about labor costs in Baton Rouge, oh, we fixed that. We fixed that. Look at the number. Yeah, the number's lower, but we didn't fire anybody. They're still at the hospital. The private operators didn't come in and take over the hospital and fire everybody and bring in new people. They kept our people.
Yeah. Did you say there was a?
We just got
Yeah,
we got another meeting.
Can I ask you one question?
Sure.
The
Ask
Senate,
me anything you want.
Senate campaign.
Yeah.
The big news today, I guess, was the Republicans pushing for an investigation of the FBI's handling of the Clinton emails. You're in the Senate. How do you respond to that?
I'm going to
If
demand
you
an
can.
investigation. I think it's embarrassing. I think it's humiliating to them. I think it's totally disrespecting the American people. I mean, how stupid do they think the American people are? And that's part of the reason people in this country are angry right now. They see most people in this country look around. I do, and I see too many undeserving people at the top getting bailouts and special treatment. I see too many undeserving people at the bottom getting the handouts, and the folks in the middle get the bill, and they can't pay it anymore because their health insurance has gone up because of the Affordable Care Act. The tuitions for their kids has gone up. Their kids are graduating with degrees in debt. They can't save any money for retirement, and when they do, they don't get any return. Their taxes have gone up. I tell you what hadn't gone up: their wages. Median income in America today is actually $2,000 less than it was back in 2002, and they feel like they're losing the American dream, and they're angry, and they feel like the system's rigged, and they feel betrayed, and they feel stuck. And it's not just at it's at the big shots and the folks who are gaming the system on the bottom, and that's why they're rearing up. And this thing with Secretary Clinton is another example. I mean, you can cite example after example after example when somebody abused classified information and got prosecuted, but not Secretary Clinton. And I think Congress is right to demand an investigation, and I would support that. I just think it's wrong.
Not to play favorites, on the other side of the presidential election, it looks like we're going to have Donald Trump as the Republican nominee, and the Republican response to Trump has kind of been a spectrum. On one hand, you had I may vote for Hillary because I don't like Donald Trump, and on the other side, you have people who are, fervently for Trump, and in the middle, you have people. It's like, geez, I don't like Trump, but at least he's not Hillary. How do you approach this as a
I'm
Republican
voting for
candidate?
Donald Trump. He's going to be the nominee of my party.
Is it a Hobson's choice thing, or is it a comfortable level of support?
I'm not going to vote for Hillary Clinton. I know that.
Yeah.
I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. I don't agree with everything Mr. Trump says. I've never agreed with everything a presidential candidate that I'm supported says. I mean, I supported John McCain. Don't agree with every position of Senator McCain. I supported Governor Romney. Don't agree with every position of Governor Romney. I don't agree with everything Mr. Trump says, but I'm going to support him. And he's the nominee of my party. I think the Republican Party represents the future of America. I think we're losing our country and the things that make this country exceptional. I don't think Secretary Clinton will do anything about it. Frankly, my indictment is of all the institutions in Washington. I think the United States Congress has done a lousy job for the American people. There are many good members of Congress. I know some of them. But as an institution, as a group, for the last 8 years, I can't figure out what they've been good for. They've done a lousy job for the American people. I think the president's done a lousy job for the American people. I think Secretary Clinton will do even worse. And I'm like a lot of Americans. I've just lost a lot of confidence in the institutions in Washington to address our problems. I think they're just clueless about what America feels. And I think what most Americans feel right now, we have had the worst recession in 2008 since the recession. We've had the worst...
Since the Depression.
Since the Depression. We've had the worst recovery from a recession in the history of recessions. A lot of people have never recovered. There are many Americans right now that, what's made our country exceptional, in my opinion, is that the circumstances of your birth don't have to determine the outcome of your life. It's called the American dream. And if we work hard enough, we can succeed. And if we work hard enough, our kids can have opportunities that we didn't. And I think for the first time, Americans are they're looking around and saying that's not working anymore. and they can look around and they see these two groups, the undeserving folks at the top getting the bailouts and the special treatment. We just saw an example of that with Secretary Clinton. They're the undeserving folks, not all, but the undeserving folks at the bottom getting handouts. And the people in the middle who just get up every day and go to work and obey the law and try to educate their kids and try to save a little money for retirement, they're getting the bill. And they can't pay it anymore. And they're angry. They feel betrayed. And now it's their turn to have their say. Now, I don't know how the election's going to turn out, but I saw passion in these primaries among two groups of voters, those supporting Mr. Trump and those supporting Senator Sanders. And I think a lot of the Sanders supporters were angry at the big shots at the top getting special treatment. I think a lot of the Trump supporters are angry at folks, the undeserving, not everybody, but those who are undeserving at the bottom getting handouts. And I think a lot of those two groups are angry about both. I'm angry about both. I think that's what's going on in our country.